So the first thing that we typically talk about when we get together with couples who are anticipating marriage, so we do premarital counseling together, which is just marriage counseling before you get married, is expectations. Expectations, guys, are huge. They're huge in any relationship you have. They're huge in your marriage relationship. And so one of the things a counselor friend of mine said to me years ago, he said, unmet expectations lead to anger. And then he added to that and said, and anger leads to depression. And I think it also leads to resentment. And sometimes the problem is the expectation. Like your expectation of your spouse is not a reasonable expectation. Sometimes the expectation is not the problem at all. It's that your spouse has no idea that that's your expectation, even though he or she, in your opinion, should be able to figure that out. Like, how does this person, who is an intelligent being, not figure this out? But they haven't figured it out. And sometimes it's reasonable, it's clear, it's stated, it's restated.
You think?
It's been made really clear. And it just goes unmet. So there's that too.
Yes.
And really the first expectation we want to talk about is just a general expectation about marriage itself. Like, what is its purpose? You know, I think we come into marriage, all of us, with our expectations about what is this going to do for me?
Yes, yes. One of the things that we do with young couples is they have to fill out a survey. And one of the questions in the survey is a very funny question because you think you would know the answer. So the question is, marriage will make me a happier person. And usually everybody agrees. But the survey answer is disagree. And I know that's an odd question and an odd right answer. But the idea of marriage trying to make us happy is not right. I mean, that is not the way God has set it up. Yes, I mean, typically we will be happier in marriage, but the idea of marriage is not to make you happy. The idea of marriage is to make us holy. It is to make us come together and grow together in this committed relationship. One of the things that happens when you have conflict with someone else, say you have conflict with a friend or a family member, what happens? Well, you can just write off the friend. You don't have to be friends with them anymore. Maybe you can just avoid your family member. It doesn't matter. But with your husband or your wife, there's not really a whole lot you can do. I mean, you need to God has made it so that you will work it out, so that you will grow together and deal with things like selfishness or pride or things like that. And so that is what the purpose of marriage is. The purpose is not to simply make us happy, which we don't understand. In this culture, this is what we're about. Whether we know it or not, it is in us deeply. And so that is the first huge problem in marriage is he can't make you happy. Your husband cannot make you happy. The wife cannot make you happy. Only the Lord has a place for that. Only the Lord can fill you. And it's not your husband or wife that can do that.
Yeah, totally. So what are you doing when you get married? You know, one of the fundamental needs of the human heart is to be fully loved. All right, well, to be fully loved, you have to be fully known. In other words, you need to reveal the whole of yourself to someone. Otherwise, you're sitting around wondering, hey, there's this part of me, and if I don't reveal, or if I did reveal this, would she still love me? All right, so what you're doing is you're covenanting before God and every important person in your life. And what I'm saying to her and what she's saying to me is, okay, no matter what I see in you, I will love you. It's a decision. It's not a feeling, though the feelings are there, but it's a decision. And what that frees her and me to do is to do what's going to happen to some degree in marriage anyway, which is you're going to be exposed. Except it gives you the opportunity to be exposed within the safety provided by this covenant, which gives this other person nowhere to run from you, and you know where to run from her or from him, as the case may be. Okay, and so Tim Keller talks about the purpose of marriage as being deep character development that takes place within the context of a deep, committed relationship that is safeguarded by a covenant. Can marriage be a source of great happiness? I think that when you live it according to the design of the designer, The answer is, of course it can. And the studies seem to indicate that people who are married long-term experience a higher level of happiness down the road. But what Beth is getting at, and what I'm getting at, is we come into marriage and we're like, yes, this is going to be the answer to all of my happiness quests. And then we are quickly disabused of that.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't quite work out that way.
Yes. What happened for me, we'll give you a personal example.
Oh, great.
My A personality type husband, I was not excited about marriage. I grew up in a broken home and was terrified, actually, of getting married. Never seen one that worked. Didn't grow up in a church or anything like that, and so didn't really want to get married. And so he kind of brought me into his family, which is a great family, and he
showed her what it could look like.
Yes. He wore me down.
My strategy was get her around the folks, show her that it can
He
work.
wore me down. He wore me down. And he convinced me, okay, I can do this, I can do this. And so then we got married, and he had just graduated law school at that point, and we had moved to Chicago together, and I had a job that moved me there, and he had to find a job. And so he became all about finding a job, and I
left her behind. That's the bottom line. I was the caveman. I had clubbed her. I bagged the woman. I dragged her into my cave, and then I went out to get food.
Exactly. And so that to me was horrible. And I didn't know how to talk to him about that. I had had no category for this in my life. And for him to do that was scary to me because it seemed like he had moved on to something else and now he wasn't going to pay any attention to me anymore, and this was a horrible thing for me. And so for 2 years, that was the hardest time in my life. And so I tell people that because sometimes it is hard. The first year or so of your marriage is hard, and that is sometimes scary for people. So I want to tell people that every single time we talk about marriage is the first couple years can be difficult as you come from separate lives, as you come from being settled in the way that you do things and the way that you run your life, and all of a sudden you have to join together and figure things out. Sometimes that's difficult to do, and so the first expectation you should have about marriage is that sometimes it starts hard, and so.
Meanwhile, I had no idea.
Because I never told.
I learned about this doing something like this with other people on the other side of the table. She's like, the first year of my marriage was the most difficult year. I'm like, was I there for that? Because I had no idea. So what we're hoping for you, what we're hoping for you is that you'll learn how to communicate those things early.
Yes, and we'll be talking
and work
about
them
that.
through so that it doesn't have to be the hardest year.
Yes.